Good morning. Hopefully this sounds okay for everybody. Thanks for attending our Affiliate Summit session. We know it's early on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. We're really excited about our session that we're presenting today. Get compliant, get conversions. We're going to kind of bring a whole new meaning to the term Sunday Fun Day. We're going to talk about not only the compliance and the FTC today, we are going to talk about different tips, tricks, and different trades that a lot of affiliate marketers will make to sometimes potentially get them in hot water. I'm going to start off introducing the members of our panel. Over here we have Blaine LeBron. Blaine is the Director of Affiliate Marketing for One Technologies, FreeScore 360. It's grown into one of the largest providers for direct-to-consumer credit scores. Blaine's been in the space for, 7, 8 years now? Something like that. Move on to Sarah De Diego. Sarah is one of our most experienced attorneys in the space. She's able to practice in California, Nevada, and the state of Colorado. She predominantly represents data providers, software providers, publishers, advertisers, and networks in affiliate marketing. And at our very end of the panel, we have Nate Seibert, and Nate is one of the media coordinators for Madrivo. He has over 13 years of sales experience, and he specializes in identifying new business opportunities, email marketing, and data management. So now that we've gone over, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Amber Paul, and I am the VP of Business Development for GlobalWide Media. So now that we've gone over the panel really quick, we can kind of dive into what we'll be going over today, the material you can expect to hear about, and we'll kind of get started. So I'm going to start with Sarah. Sarah, can you go over with us what truth in advertising rules apply to online advertising and affiliate marketing?
Well, yes, Amber, I can. Good morning. Today we're going to be talking a lot about, or mainly about, the FTC rules about truth in advertising. What applies to the landing pages you make, the ads that you run, the email creatives, the banner ads, the ads that show up on mobile. That's what we're going to be talking about this morning. If you guys have questions, please raise your hand. If we don't see you, call out. Questions are definitely welcome anytime during the presentation. So we're going to start with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission Act, which says, and as it's up here, advertising must be truthful and non-deceptive. Advertisers must have evidence to back up their claims, and advertisements cannot be unfair. These are very simple rules, but in practice, they can sometimes be really hard to apply. You think something as easy as it must be truthful, everybody's ads would be like that. But I would say probably, more than 50% of the ads that I see are not, even slightly. And of course, I'm sure it's nobody's in this room. Our last presentation a couple of months ago, we actually used someone's ad as our example, and turned out they were in the room.
Oops.
It's really embarrassing for them. Advertisers must also have evidence to back up their claims. So if you're saying that your product, you're going to lose 3 pounds a week, you're going to lose 10 pounds a week, you're going to save 50% on your auto insurance, well, you need to have something to back that up. So do you have studies? Do you have hard data to show that consumers actually save 50% on their auto insurance? If you don't, then you're violating the FTC rule. And advertisements cannot be unfair. So you can't be making claims that cause the consumer to buy something or do something, and then it turns out that your claim is untrue and it's unfair to the consumer.
Sarah, what makes an advertisement deceptive?
Well, Amber, let me tell you. According to the FTC's policy statement on deception, an ad is deceptive if it contains a statement or omits information. So it's not just that you explicitly say something. You say you're going to save 50% on your auto insurance. It's also if you fail to say something. So if you fail to say that 99% of consumers don't save anything on their auto insurance, that also can be deceptive because you're omitting information that's material to what you're trying to sell the consumer. It's also deceptive if it's likely to mislead consumers, and if it's about a material aspect of the claim. So the part that you're leaving out, or the part that you're kind of not quite telling the truth about, is the main part of your ad. It's what's getting the consumer to buy the product or to buy your service. And at the bottom of this slide, and on some of the other slides, we have links to these various guides on the FTC's website. I would highly recommend visiting ftc.gov, clicking on the consumer protection unit and reading through these. They cover everything to do with advertising. They have full guides, the .com business guides. They just came out with a new one about diet offers. They have one about mobile. If you read through these, you get a very good idea of what the FTC wants to see and what they don't want to see. And they even have color examples in there that are circled, noted, and say, don't do this. I really cannot stress enough that it's a great idea to read these guides that the FTC has put out. We can go to the next one. Now, when the FTC is looking at whether or not something is deceptive, these are the factors that they look at. So they look at the ad from the point of view of a reasonable consumer. And by reasonable consumer, we're not talking about somebody with, a master's degree from a big university. We're talking about someone who lives in the middle of Iowa on a farm. That's their idea of a reasonable consumer, from my opinion. Usually the studies that they do, the polls that they take are from middle America, at a mall. It's not particular, so something where you're leaving something out, or maybe something where when you read it, you're like, okay, I kind of get what they're saying. I see that they're just kind of doing a hard sell. They're not looking at it from the point of view of a highly intelligent ad executive. They're looking at it from the point of view of the reasonable consumer. So if the normal person, middle America, is going to be deceived by this, then it's deceptive. They also look at both the express and the implied claims. So not just what you're actually saying, like I said before, what you've admitted to say, or just what you're implying. And by implied, it can be from the pictures that you're showing. Maybe you're showing before and after pictures. You're selling a skin cream and you're showing, wrinkly before pictures and wrinkle-free after pictures. You don't actually say it fixes your wrinkles, but by the picture, you're implying that it does that. That can be just as deceptive as actually stating whatever you're trying to convey to the consumer. So you have to look at, the pictures that you're using, graphics that you're using, and also just the way that you're saying things. If you're just implying it does something when it doesn't really, you might think that you're okay because you haven't actually stated it, but just implying it can be enough to violate the FTC rules. And like I said, the FTC looks at what the ad does not say. So if you're failing to admit, important information, like, yeah, you're going to lose 5 pounds a week, but you're also going to have all your hair fall out and your toenails fall off. You're failing to put in some information that's really important, and the FTC is not going to be so happy about that. Again, as I said before, they look at whether the claim would be material to it. So if you're making some claims that don't really have anything to do with it, you're just kind of puffing up your ad, maybe it's not such a big deal. But if you're making a claim that's material to their decision whether or not they buy, and material to whatever it is that you're selling, that is what they're going to look at as being the problem if it's deceptive. And finally, they do heavily look at whether you have evidence to back up your claim. So when you're saying that your product's going to, cause the consumer to lose X amount of pounds per week, you need to have hard data to back that up. Not have copy-pasted some study that Dr. Oz put up on his website and have a link to it and say, hey, look, Dr. Oz said it, so it must be true. No, that's not going to work. You have to actually have conducted studies, have real, and I'm talking about just for like a weight loss product or something health, but you'd have to actually have that hard data on file for you, for your product, not something that you saw on TV and thought it would be a good idea. That just doesn't work. And that goes for anything that you're trying to sell online or offline. If you're saying that your product does something and it doesn't, well, they're going to come after you. And we actually just saw this earlier this week. The FTC settled with Sensa, which is was, I think they won't be much longer, a large diet product where you sprinkled sprinkling magic stuff on your food, and then you somehow lose weight after eating it. And the FTC settled with them last week, I think it was like $26 million, I think, something like that, which was all the money that they had. Because they said that, well, you've been claiming this for like 10 years, but you don't actually have anything to back up your claims. You have nothing. And they said, well, we have these studies, and it turned out that they didn't actually have the studies. They were fake. The studies weren't really controlled studies. In the studies, they were taking down people's weight measurements a week before they actually got weighed. I'm not sure how you do that. But the FTC was not happy about it. So, and Sense is a big company. It's been around a long time. So it's not just the small little guys that the FTC goes after, it's also big companies. They'll go after anybody who's doing something that's deceptive. Another one we saw last year was Reebok, or maybe it was about a year and a half ago. They were making these shoes that were supposed to like increase the muscles in your calves if you wore them while you're walking, but because they were like imbalanced on the bottom. I tried them and they were just really uncomfortable, and I threw them away. Unfortunately, because the FTC settled with Reebok, and Reebok had to refund every single person that bought the shoes. And again, it's a big company. It's not just little guys that you see, online. You're like, oh, that's so terrible. I can't believe they do that. Well, the FTC also goes after the big companies. So if you're making a claim like that these shoes are going to help increase your muscle tone in your legs, and you don't have any evidence to back it up, that's qualifies as deceptive. Yeah.
I have a question about governments. I assume the FTC and the FDA can only sue American companies, right?
The question was whether or not the FTC and FDA can only pursue American companies. Yes and no, because most people are in America at some point. So yes, maybe your company's overseas. They're probably not going to pop over to like France and come after you because they don't have any jurisdiction there. Our laws don't apply. However, you probably have a manufacturer here, or you have your servers hosted here, or you stop over here for vacation or whatever. So even if you're a foreign company, if you're deceiving American consumers, they will still go after you. They might just get a judgment against you in your absence. And then if you happen to stop over, like to go to Vegas for Affiliate Summit, they might be waiting for you at the airport. So it doesn't really, their jurisdiction stops at our borders, but in practice, yes, they can still go after non-American companies.
And I will say they also work in conjunction with foreign governments. And over a year ago, there was a $500 million settlement with the Canadian organization, and the FTC worked with the Canadian government to actually collect that and shut it down. So it's possible.
Question in the back?
So, in our case scenario, we're a focus company, we focus supplement. And we put a bunch of some studies that help us formulate our formula on our website, and then we had to pull them off because our attorney said that you can't actually show studies from third parties if they even mention any kind of focus disease, like ADHD or anything like that. How do you walk the fine line between showing studies and scientific research behind ingredients, and then not showing studies that may infer something endorsing?
I guess you can do it through disclosures, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a bit. If you're putting up a study and only part of it applies to yours, or there's a section of it that you know that doesn't apply, I would call that out prominently. I would say, here's, in this study done this date, they came to these findings, however, only this part of it applies to our product, these parts do not apply. As long as, the general rules, as long as you're adequately disclosing anything like that, then the FTC, is usually okay with that. If the consumer can read it and clearly say, okay, I see the study, I see what they've done, but they've said that this doesn't apply. The point, what the FTC wants is that for consumers to make decisions, like informed decisions. It's not that the FTC is saying, okay, consumer, you can't go buy stupid diet products, or you can't go buy whatever wrinkle cream that's not really going to work. They just want them to make their own decision. So as long as the consumer has the facts to make an informed decision, the FTC will leave it at that. And that's why they do the reasonable consumer test. So would the average person realize what they're actually buying before they buy it? Or is the average consumer being duped into something? Are they being tricked into buying something they wouldn't have otherwise bought if you had adequately disclosed all these facts about your product?
Let's say that the merchant makes a false claim. Is the FTC going to chase also the affiliates?
It's a really good question. The question was, if the advertiser makes a false claim, will the FTC also go after the affiliates? And the answer is yes, definitely. And it's not just the FTC as well. It's attorney generals, states' attorneys, and other regulatory bodies will do it. But we've seen that a lot. Like about a year and a half ago, there was a case against IMM, Intermark Media.
Intermark Media.
Intermark Media. And they were fairly large, well-established ad network that had their own products they were making themselves as well. So they were also an advertiser. And the FTC went after them for doing, for having misleading diet offers. In fact, one of the pages, I actually just saw it online the other day. It was the ones where it looked like it was a fake news site, and it had a picture of a girl who turned out to actually be, I think, a reporter in like Brazil or something. And this whole story of I tried this diet product and I lost 15 pounds and blah, blah, blah. And it was all fake. The person was a real reporter, but she hadn't actually tried the product. The whole story was fake. They went after them. But what they did, and this was the first time I think I've seen them go after affiliates as well, they also went after 9 of their affiliates. So on a Monday morning, 9 of their affiliates woke up to have all their bank accounts frozen and being served papers that day, which is not really a nice way to start a Monday, I gotta tell you. Because you get served papers and you're like, oh crap, I also don't have any money. I can't even like go get coffee to read my papers over because I have no money. Oh, it sucks. So yes, they do go after affiliates. And in that case, the affiliates, most of them settled out, but they literally lost everything. Like one guy lost his truck, and it was not even a very nice truck, but they lost like their clothing. I mean, they'll literally take whatever you have in order to satisfy a judgment. So yes, they definitely go after affiliates.
And a little bit on that point, being a merchant myself, we're a really well-established merchant with like a floor of lawyers. Not really. I mean, we actually have a huge legal team. So you can rely on, some of your larger, more well-established advertisers. They have large legal teams. I encourage you guys to work with them to, say, hey, I'm thinking of marketing something one way or another. A lot of people get upset because I'm the one coming down and hammering them for, their creative that they haven't, had pre-approved. But the reality is we spend millions a year on legal fees for outside counsels, all of our internal counsels, and our internal legal teams. And you should use that as a resource. However, you also need to have some kind of review process for every offer you run. There was actually a case 6 years ago. One of my largest competitors was reselling the annual credit report site through a link in their portal. And I kept telling people they were paying a fortune for it. Of course, they had no fulfillment costs, right? I mean, it was a great deal for the affiliate. But at the same time, you really can be responsible for those things. That was before the FTC really got involved, but we engage regulatory bodies on a daily basis, including the FTC and all the AGs, to make sure we're doing the right thing. And they have a very good idea of how the network system works. They, don't believe as much anymore in network transparency. And, you can't hide against, behind that kind of veil all the time. So you need to take personal responsibility, but then also use the resources you have to make informed decisions for the offers you run.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I hear that a lot from affiliates that are just like, oh, well, the advertiser said it's okay. They gave me the creative, so it's not my responsibility. Why do I care what they gave it to me? They're going to take care of it. Well, what if they don't have any money? What if, like with Sensa, the FTC just took all of their money? So if you were running that and the FTC is going after you too, Sensa's not going to have any money to indemnify you and take care of the lawsuit or the fines or the fees because, well, they went out of business. So it is your responsibility as well to go to your advertiser and say, hey, is this ad compliant? Like, you're making these claims. Do you actually have anything to back them up? Do you have studies on file? Oh, you do? Great. Can you send those over? Your testimonials, are those real people? Oh, they are? Great. Send me over affidavits to show it. I just want to keep those on file. And you'll find, unfortunately, a lot of times the answer is, oh, yeah, I'm not really sure where those are. We'll get back to you. Well, in that case, I wouldn't run it because you don't know that it's actually compliant. And with your networks too, if you're running it through a network, go to your network, do your due diligence. Like Blaine said, most of the larger companies have a big legal team, they have a compliance team, they're reviewing this stuff every day, they're paying tons of money to have this done so that you don't have to, but not everybody does. So those are questions that it is your responsibility to ask. Are these things compliant? Do you have someone reviewing them? Have you asked these questions of the advertiser? You can't just blindly say, well, hey, the network gave it to me, or the advertiser gave it to me, it must be fine. It just doesn't work anymore.
Just following up on what Blaine said, as an affiliate, how can you access the merchant's legal team? Because I always go via networks, and networks kind of guard their contacts at the advertiser very closely and won't let them contact them directly to find out what issues are with the creative. So how do you ask people to access that?
Also something we could probably both speak
I'm
on.
going to tread a little lightly, but I will say this. I choose the partners I work with very carefully. We don't work with every network out there. We work with Amber very closely. She knows very, very well.
When
We talk
Blaine's
about
done,
this
I'll jump in on that a little bit from the network standpoint.
every day. But you can, I think you should push your network personally to work with their advertiser to get you your answer. And if you're not getting an answer, then maybe they don't really have that good of a relationship with them, or maybe the advertiser really isn't that legitimate at the end of the day. I mean, I'm constantly sending stuff out. I have a whole team of people that send stuff out. We proactively search for, what creatives are being run, where we have tons of stuff like that. Now, we didn't back 5 years ago, but we still cared about it. And, from my standpoint, I'm going to work with the people that I know will get me what I need so that we can review it and make sure everybody's compliant. If you don't feel you're getting that from your network, then it's time to switch networks. That's my opinion on that.
And then just from the affiliate working with the network, when you're evaluating the different networks that you work with, take the time to ask your representative or who you're dealing with, do they have an in-house counsel? Do they have an in-house counsel that's reviewing their ads? Do they have, if they don't have an in-house counsel, is it outsourced? Maybe ask the name of who some of their attorneys are, just so you can have a background and really understand who they're working with, and look at the longevity and how long the affiliate network has been around. If the affiliate network has only been around for a year and they just have a tracking platform set up, the chances are they're not really reviewing the ads that are set up, and the other chances are if something happens, they don't have the funds to cover you. So really just kind of evaluate your partners a little bit more. So while the weekly payments might be nice from everybody, really make sure that it's a long-term relationship and investment. And then when they're working with certain advertisers, feel free to ask your rep, is the paperwork in place? Do you have a contract in place with this advertiser? The creative that's being provided by your advertiser, do you have a contract in place saying that they can provide it to you and that they are a little bit responsible for it? So just asking a couple more questions, and any good rep at a network would be more than happy to talk to you about it. Okay,
It's a really good question. So the question was, if you are an affiliate, in my example before where the guy lost his truck, if you had a corporation set up, would that protect you? That's kind of too big of a question for the purposes of this session, but the short answer is not really. Actually, not really at all. The FTC doesn't care, is the answer. When you're entering into a settlement with the FTC, they send you these 3 forms. It's like Form A, B, and C. And I think on C, you have to list all of your assets. So you're the CEO of a company, maybe even a large company, a large corporation. Like, we'll go back to the Sensa example. The settlement was with them and the doctor whose face appeared on everything and who was the majority shareholder in the company, him personally as well. They go after your company and you personally, and saying, oh, I've got a corporation. They're like, we don't care you have a corporation. You defrauded customers. You couldn't defrauded consumers out of millions of dollars. We don't care. They'll take everything. I've seen them take your houses, your cars, your ATVs, your jet skis. Jesse Wilms, they took his fur coats.
That's my favorite one.
Fur coats.
And he was in Canada too.
Yeah, he was a Canada corporation.
Say it again?
Florida. Well, Florida is a homestead state, but they can still go after all of your assets.
Yeah, they can still go after all your stuff. Yes, Florida's a homestead state, but that's, again, beyond the scope of this panel. But they will go after everything. And on that form, you have to literally list out everything you personally own, not just the corporation, which you personally own. And it's a settlement. The FTC, everybody settles with the FTC. So you're settling with them, and you're saying, okay, I have this house, I have this car, I have this fur coat. We'll settle for this. And this, in general, the FTC settlements always are everything. It's not like you're like, I got a house, I got a car, you take the fur coat. And they're like, no, we'll take all of it. It's a settlement. So you're settling. So you're agreeing to give them whatever it is. And usually that agreement is in place of them continuing to pursue you and, and then taking it at the end. I don't know. I can't say that.
Any more questions? Okay, last one and we'll move on.
I have 2 questions. The first one is it typical that the FTC will get all assets?
Yes.
Great.
If you read the press releases on the FTC's website, it's a little terrifying.
They're really funny, actually, sometimes, the stuff that
Sometimes
they
they are
take.
funny. I
Yeah.
mean, they're horrible because they take everything.
It'll be like a 1992 Nissan, whatever. And you're like, really? You made that much money from consumers and you're driving a 92 Nissan? No offense if anyone drives a 92 Nissan, sorry. It was just an example I saw on the FTC website recently.
My second question is, well, first, the reason I said good is I have competitors that are being pursued by the FTC, so I'd be happy to do all that. But the other side to it is, I'm a marketer in a secondary market, and some of my competitors are heavily, some of my big competitors are heavily using the word official in their advertisements and their websites. Now, the product's official, but they're not like, when I personally think of official, I think of the primary source. What's your opinion on the use of the word official? Because I know that they are, I don't know, but I'm assuming that they're getting, because it looks misleading to me. I'm assuming that they're getting better for what their rates and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting what your opinion is on the word official. To me, it's misleading.
I deal with these situations constantly. Credit monitoring is clearly a really competitive space, and we have these discussions all the time internally, and it sucks from an advertiser standpoint. Not everybody is going to play fair, or not even play fair, but play correctly. From our company standpoint, we've lasted a long time, over 10 years now, 12 years. And the reason is because we made those better choices, and sometimes it's at the cost of sales. What I can say is over the many years that we've been running this, people come and people go. And the Jesse Wilms one was one of them with the annual credit board. They're paying like 3 times what I was, but people allow all these different things. My affiliates are like, so-and-so's letting me run security breach language and saying that there was a breach in your Bank of America account. You know what? I can't take that traffic, and eventually it'll catch up to the advertiser, and they'll lose and you'll win because you did the right thing. If you feel in your gut that it's not the right thing to say, I wouldn't say it. Our CEO always says he's willing to, if he's going to say something is compliant, he's going to be willing to go up in a court of law with a jury, prosecutors, and everything, and say, yeah, I stand behind that. I don't think that that's deceptive. So if in your gut you feel like it's deceptive, I wouldn't do it.
Well, I'm not going to do it, but I'm just, evaluating the market that I'm playing in.
Yeah.
And would your opinion, just in a vacuum, be that it would be against what these bullet points that you're...
Can't really say it in a vacuum because it's a vacuum. So his question was about whether or not the word official, using that, whether or not that's deceptive. It does depend on the totality of the circumstances. It's the whole ad taken together. That's what the FTC looks at. And it's funny he mentioned if you feel it in your gut that it's deceptive, you probably shouldn't do it, because the FTC just came out last week with a new guide I think it's actually called Gut Check, something like that. And their whole thing is about that. Your advertiser's giving you the ad. Maybe it's not your sales staff responsibility to, look at all the legal aspects of it, but you need to teach your sales staff, they actually said this, you need to teach your sales staff the gut check. So if they see it and they're like, that doesn't seem right, you need to actually teach your staff to be going higher and saying, hey, is this okay? Doing a little bit of extra checking on it. So that's another great guide. I would definitely recommend reading it. We didn't have it in our slides because it just came out this week, but it's on the FTC's website, and it's called something Gut Check. And it is a really good way to, gauge whether or not something's deceptive. If you look at it and you're like, I think that's deceptive, well, it probably is. Or at least it's worth taking a second look.
Okay, so this will actually take us perfectly into our next slide. This is a couple of examples that Blaine actually provided us. So Blaine, if you want to go over with us what we specifically would find wrong on this page, and what the FTC would find deceptive and what would be against your gut.
Okay, so this, just so you know, if you're not familiar with it, is a pay-per-view ad, PPV ad. It pops over certain websites. This one looks like a Facebook ad. However, this one was popping over, an incentivized site. And basically it says, due to your recent online activity, you have this reward of like $1,500 that you can sign up for, but, you have to verify your identity basically and get your credit report. They use language at the top that says, warning, if you leave now, your reward will be forfeited. I see this a lot, and this is kind of an egregious example, but the reason I like it is because we see a lot of use of an email creative, for example, urgent, immediate action required, warning, these kind of trigger words that the average consumer is going to be, fearful of. So, one of the things that we don't allow is these kind of fear tactics, I guess, is the best way to put it, because it creates a false sense of urgency, and this will get you nailed. A lot of times publishers will try to tell me that, it's a call to action. This isn't a call to action. Like, get yours now would be a call to action. These kind of things are call to action. Unfortunately, you have to test your way into it. And, we brought the hammer down really hard on the use of this kind of stuff. And it took us a while to get our publishers tested through and finding new trigger terms that are actually calls to action and not, like this. But, you're always going to be able to find a way to make it convert. But a lot of it just has to do with testing. The other thing that we see a lot of is, like I said, this looks like a Facebook message notification. Another one of our guidelines is we don't want any of our marketing creative to appear to be representing another company. It doesn't matter that the logo's on there or not, and that's what a lot of people think. For instance, if there was a similar ad that popped over, like Bank of America's website saying, oh, there was a security breach on Bank of America or Target or whatever, get your credit score from Bank of America or whatever. And then there's like a red border around it, red letters, and it kind of looks like a Bank of America site. I look at call notes all the time. I mean, we literally have millions of call notes. Consumers think it's Bank of America. This is clearly not Facebook in my mind. I mean, it looks really janky, actually. Most of these ads do. And that's how people justify it. However, the consumer really doesn't know. And you can go through tons of these call notes where people have signed up, through things like this, and they think it's Facebook. They think it's the bank. And the second the reasonable consumer thinks it's something else, the FTC will nail you for that. And so, and then you've got attorneys generals, and oh, by the way, there's also Bank of America and Facebook. And, we're a pretty big company, but I don't want to go up against any of those, and I don't think any of y'all do either, so.
Move on to the next one. So this is just another example. We can run through this one quickly.
Yeah, I actually already discussed this. This was one of the identity theft ones.
Do you want to go over this one at all?
Sorry.
I really want to ask something.
Yeah.
The slide before. These requirements all sound very reasonable, but to me, for the SMB or independent affiliate, they're really expensive. So what can they do?
Repeat the question.
For a company, this is obvious. You have a legal team, and they need more than that. But how can an SMB do research, for example? How can they compete on corporates and do that?
Unfortunately, the FTC doesn't care how big you are. So they just don't care. If they come to you, you're doing something deceptive, and you say, but it's just me working on my living room. I don't have the money for a legal team. They say, we don't care. The law doesn't care. It's like, you crash your car and you kill someone. They don't care how much money you have. The law is the law.
And I'm not looking for excuses. I'm just looking for a solution.
Gotcha.
Obviously, this is good. This is good for the customers and for a healthy competition.
Well, the solution, I think, depending on what it is that you do, but if you're an affiliate, like we were talking about before, the solution is to work with companies that are reputable. So work with networks that you know are reputable. They have a legal team that's doing this. Take advantage of that. They have the money to have that. Work with advertisers that are reputable, that have a legal team that's doing this, that have a compliance team that's doing this. I'm not saying that you have to yourself personally, if you're an affiliate, go out and hire some giant law firm and, have them review every ad. But it is your responsibility to work with advertisers and networks, wherever you're getting your ads, that are reputable. And it's also really important to see what they put in that contract. So when you're signing up with them and you're reading it, make sure that somewhere in there it's saying that they're going to be responsible for those ads. So if you go to run an ad from an advertiser, expect them to be responsible for that ad. If they're going to give it to you, they need to stand behind it. And a lot of times, be surprised, you go back to them and say, hey, we need to add this in that you're going to be responsible for the ad. And they say, oh, no. And you're like, really? If you're not going to be responsible for the ad, why would I run it from you? You must not have enough to stand behind your product or your service if you're not even going to be willing to be responsible for the ad that I'm going to run. So I think the answer is just work with people that are good. Do your due diligence, work with reputable companies.
A lot of the networks that have legal counsel, they would be thrilled if a smaller marketer were to come to them and say, could you please have your legal counsel review my advertisement or my landing page? They would be very happy, because then it actually takes a lot more of the liability off of the larger company as well, because they've been able to see what's being promoted. It's when we don't know what our affiliates are using with our advertisers' brands, that's when we have problems. So if you were to go to a larger company and just ask them to have their legal counsel, they would probably be more than happy to do so. Utilizing the FTC guides is really a strong way too when starting out and being a smaller marketer, just to get a good idea of what you can and can't do.
I'll also say you're creating a paper trail that kind of actually helps you out a little bit, because you're doing your due diligence by sending it to someone. If you're getting the runaround or if you're getting real answers too. And then you have all that for your record. So, that makes the advertiser more responsible, the network more responsible. And, that's why we record everything so much. But, it's definitely checking, dotting your I's there. You should do that.
We even do, I think Nate could talk about this. I think you guys even save like the emails and stuff as a paper trail.
Yeah, like email confirmations would be great too. Can't you read? Yeah, so getting anything on email is great confirmation. You could always go back, review history, show that, yes, this is what you said and you should be liable for, correct?
Yeah, and it's not that hard to shoot an email off to your network, your advertiser, and say, hey, do you have anything to back up this claim? It's usually literally, that's the most I'll put in an email. Or Nate's, the company works for as one of my clients, and I'll say that, just ask them, do they have anything to back up this crazy claim that they're making? And most of the time the answer is yes, but a lot of times the answer is no.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Okay, we're going to roll into, now that we've gone over landing pages on the web, we're going to roll into the mobile aspect of online marketing. So as a lot of us know, over half of internet users are viewing ads from mobile devices. So just because it's on a mobile device, it doesn't mean the FTC doesn't govern that. In 2014, it's actually projected that worldwide, there's going to be an estimated 7.3 billion mobile devices that'll be serving advertisements. Sarah, has the FTC provided any guidance on this rapidly growing topic and vertical?
Why, yes, Amber, they have. When you're viewing an ad on your laptop, you're going to see things a certain way. So above the fold, you're going to see certain, language, checkboxes, maybe pictures, disclosures. We see this happen a lot with, give an example, like a rebill. So you have a continuity offer, and if you view it on your desktop, you're going to see that somewhere above where you press submit, it says, you're going to be rebilled $14.95 a month for the rest of your life, and it's disclosed there. But you go and you view that same ad on your phone, and the way that it shows up, now that disclosure, probably just due to the way that, your tech guy coded the site, now that disclosure is somewhere, you'd have to scroll down for like 5 minutes to find it. So now when the consumer views that ad, what wasn't deceptive on your desktop is now deceptive, because you're not disclosing something that's material to whatever it is that you're doing. So now they go and they purchase it without ever seeing that they're going to be rebilled $14.95 for the rest of their life, because they didn't see the disclosure. It's there, it just, you can't see it now. Or maybe you're doing a weight loss product, and you're saying results not typical, the average person does X, X, and X, or you're disclosing some other fact about your product or service that's really material. And on your landing page, on your desktop, it looks fine. You've reviewed it, you've looked over it, you've had someone else review it, look over it, and it looks great. Everything's there. But then when they view it on a mobile device, it's no longer there. And the FTC, again, the same rules apply. You have to be truthful in your advertising, regardless of the medium that it's viewed on. So if I view it on my mobile phone and it's deceptive because it's not disclosing something that's material, or it's otherwise, deceptive, the FTC is going to look into that, and they can go after that, because it's based on, again, on the reasonable consumer, the medium that they're viewing it on. If they see it on their phone and there's something missing, they're not going to think to scroll down for 5 minutes to find that disclosure that you had up there. The FTC has a good one on this one as well, called the .com Disclosures Guide. I think, go back one. And they say, in that guide, they say if a disclosure is required and it cannot be made in a clear and conspicuous fashion, the advertisement should not be disseminated. That's how strong they feel about this. If your ad, when you view it on a mobile device, if you can't make it so that everything's disclosed adequately, don't send the ad. Like, plain and simple, there's no wiggle room on this. It's not a gray area, it's black and white. If you can't show your disclosures clearly and conspicuously, then just don't send the ad. Which sounds really harsh, but that's what they've said, and since they make the rules, it's probably a good idea to follow that one.
I'll also say publishers have real big problems with these disclaimers, especially on the mobile devices. You know, we do have a really huge testing team that does tons of testing all the time to make sure that any change we make, especially legal changes, doesn't hurt our conversion rate in any way. We've produced tons of different variations of disclosures. We're a continuity offer, and it's at the top of our page. Publishers thought it was just going to ruin their conversion rate. It didn't. You can find ways, and especially with the new TPCA regulations for anyone doing lead gen, you know, there are ways to actually include disclosures in good places where the FTC and all the other regulatory bodies won't have a problem with it and be happy, and still get conversion rate. You just have to test it, unfortunately. So it's a little extra work, but at the end of the day, as long as you're protected, you know, it's worth the time and effort.
And you don't really have a choice. They're saying either make it compliant or don't run it. So you don't really have a choice other than to test it and make sure it's compliant. The FTC also has some ideas of how you can do this. They're saying if you're showing it on a mobile device, they recommend that you use text or visual cues to alert the consumer that there's more below. I mean, they're realistic. They know your screen's only this big. You can only show so much. But you can say things like, see below for important warranty information. Or tell them, scroll down for important disclosures. And then make it unavoidable. And this, I think, is really key. What they're saying is, make it so the consumer has to read the disclosure before they buy your product or before they go to the next page. So don't just say, scroll down for important information, and then right below that have the submit button and take their credit card. No, wait until after they've scrolled down to the bottom, past the disclosure, then take their credit card and click submit. And this way I like the FTC guides so much because they're right there. I mean, they tell you that all these slides are from the FTC guides. They tell you exactly what you can and cannot do, what you should and shouldn't do, very much in black and white. So if you're doing these things that the FTC has said not to, and they've written it out and posted it online, it's just kind of stupid, in my opinion. There's no excuse not to comply when it's there in fancy long guides with pretty pictures and arrows pointing to what's bad. The FTC they're not trying to trick you into not complying. They're trying to, protect consumers, but they've also put a lot of effort into disclosing this information to marketers and telling them, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. So again, I just love these guides. I really, really recommend reading them because they have all this information in them and a lot more. And you're going to be reading through and be like, oh, I totally do that. Ooh, oops. That's one that they said is bad. I should not do that anymore. And they even have some good examples too.
Okay, let's move on to disclosures that encompass online advertising and mobile advertising. Nate, I'm going to move over to you if you would like to discuss some of the guidance that the FTC has given on disclosures.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. When it comes to disclosures, this might be the only time size does matter. Don't tell my wife that.
The FTC says so.
So when it comes to size matters, I mean, when it comes to disclosures and everything, if it's too small for a consumer to read, that's obviously not a good thing. You need to be able to, it needs to be, what am I trying to look for?
Clearly and conspicuous. Clear and conspicuous.
That's the word I was looking for. So consumers need to be able to read it. When you're having it too small, it's basically looking like you're trying to hide something. In the disclosures, it needs to say what the product, or how the product actually works. So if it's a rebilling type offer, it needs to disclose that it's a rebilling. You want the disclosures to stand out. So when it comes to the disclosure, have it in a different color. You could have your text all in black. You could have the disclosure in gray or green, whatever colors you want. Just anything that helps it stand out, make it easy to read.
Gray maybe doesn't stand out so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then white text on white background doesn't help you.
As a rule of thumb, we like to say the font size should be slightly larger and or the same size as the majority of the marketing copy on the page. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. If you're making it any smaller or any lighter than what your normal marketing message is, then you're not compliant.
Let's see here. Where does that take us? Variations. Always be aware of, well, Sarah talked about this earlier already, but when it comes to like mobile and everything like that, always be aware of what it's going to look like on different devices. So I mean, when it comes to a laptop, it might look one way on a laptop, but when it comes to a mobile device, like Sarah mentioned before, you might have to scroll down 15 pages in order to get down to the disclosure. So make it easy to get to. Let's see. It's, different. Now that also comes down to when it comes to operating systems. Landing pages are going to show up differently on different operating systems, along with browsers, et cetera. There. Is that?
Yeah, she went to the next one.
Oh, sorry, went to the next one. Use text that prompts consumers.
I think it's where you use like I think what we were talking about a minute ago about putting in words that prompt consumers to scroll down or to click here, look here for something that's important instead of just trying to hide it so they don't actually see it. Most of the time when I'm seeing an ad where I'm like, I don't know if that's okay, it's because the marketer is purposely trying to hide it. And I see that a lot where they're like, okay, I don't really want the consumer to read this disclosure, so if I put it here, is that okay? Or if I put it there, is that okay? Can I make it this size? Can I do it this way? And if you're putting that much effort into trying to make it comply but have them not really see it, then you're not complying. The idea is to not hide things from the consumer, disclose everything that they need to see, what they need to know and before, to make an informed decision about your product.
And by the way, from our perspective, there's been a lot of changes over the last few years, especially in our space, and thanks to the creation of the CFPB, that makes things even funner for us. As we started tackling these things, I was specifically worried that our affiliates were just gonna lose all their conversions and it was gonna be a disaster. I think you'd be surprised what we've found through all of our testing, which literally costs us millions of dollars a year in testing that we do, is the more compliant you are and the more upfront you are, it's actually kind of funny. Customers tend to respond now better to that because there's been so many of these stories, so many customer investigations over the years. Consumers are starting to get a little more savvy and a little more have a little more trepidation online, I guess, about what's true. And a lot of people have been screwed at this point too, so they're not looking to get screwed again. So the reality is, the more upfront you are, it just seems like consumers seem to respond to that. It makes you a lot more legitimate, and I think you'd be surprised. The results you get. Sometimes we've actually found huge conversion wins by being even more upfront than we were originally anticipated. So it's sometimes the bigger the better on these things.
Blaine, do you want to touch really quick on just different heat mapping and click-throughs that you can do on landing pages to find out where the users are actually clicking?
Like different tools and stuff. Oh, and this is another great thing. There's so many great affiliate tools out there for testing today. It used to be really difficult to do it. A lot of the tracking platforms are starting to utilize testing features. Google Analytics is super easy to use too, to find out where people are clicking and everything. But there's also a lot of simple rotation tools. They don't cost a lot of money, and you can actually find statistically significant results really quickly. It's a little extra money, but it's really worth it because even a slight boost to your conversion rate or click-through rate for that matter can be huge money for you. So not only can you stay compliant and make sure that you're doing something that isn't going to actually hurt your conversions, but you're also, you also have a chance of finding a really big conversion win. And that has happened a lot with us. So I tell you, it's possible.
Go back. Can you go back to the one before? I think the part about hyperlinks is actually really important. Nate, did you want to?
Yeah. With hyperlinks, I mean, for those that don't know what a hyperlink is, it takes you from one page to another to give you information. But basically, make sure your hyperlinks work. Privacy policies, unsublinks, contact us. It's very important that everything works. And then, of course, your submit here and, and buy now. You want those to work for sure. But definitely have those work when it comes to your disclosures.
And the FTC, one of the things that I actually was surprised about this when I read this a long time ago, or a little surprised by how kind of, I think, mean they are on this point, that don't be coy about your disclosures. So a lot of people will be like, okay, I need to disclose this important stuff, and I've put it here in legal disclosure, like a little hyperlink that says that, or disclosure. And they're saying, that's not good enough. If you have something that's really important, it needs to be on the page right there where they can see it before they make a purchase, not hidden in even something that's as clear as says disclosure or legal. The FTC wants it right there where the consumer can see it, not hidden through the hyperlinks. And I think this is something that you wouldn't think they would say. You would think that, okay, I'm putting in disclosure, I've prominently labeled it disclosures, and they're saying, you know, that's probably not even good enough, depending on what it is that you need to disclose to the consumer.
Okay, so we're actually running a little tight on time now. We have about 8 minutes left. So panel, if you're in agreement, I'm thinking the best thing that we should do is probably just open up the mic to some last minute questions, unless there's some slides that we absolutely want to get through. Go ahead.
The FTC generally does not respond, is the answer. So the question was, it's a good idea to reach out to your networks or advertisers and ask them, make sure they have what they need to have. But can you ask the FTC? Can you ask their opinion on an ad? And the answer is no, they won't respond. No, because it's their policy. They don't respond. They won't provide you guidance because they're basically giving you legal guidance then. And they're not your lawyer, and there's rules about that. So they just don't. I mean, they will do it sometimes for, I have seen it for larger advertisers, like you're saying, an opinion letter. But that's generally when you've already gotten in trouble and you've settled with them. And then after that, you're under their microscope. They're reviewing your stuff. And in that case, then they'll look at it and say, yes, okay, this is okay for you to run, or it's not okay for you to run. But you've already gotten in trouble to be at that point, generally. That you can't just send in an ad to the FTC and say, hey, can you tell me if this is okay? They won't even email you back or write you back. We could go through the, why don't you scroll a couple down? It's an obvious, yeah, why don't we do this one? Nate, do you want to do this one?
Yeah, this is a good example on a landing page of what to look for. Usually when I bring in an offer, I mean, I take a look. If I'm dealing with a new company or anything, I usually try to take a look at 5 to 10 of their landing pages right away. Just kind of scope out what they're dealing with. So if you get a bunch of landing pages and you're seeing stuff that's on the landing pages like as seen on Shape or NBC or USA Today, most of the time a product isn't on one of those channels. So make sure that a company would have an affidavit or it's actually been seen on, quote, that magazine, that TV station, etc. A lot of companies will just add that stuff just because it helps convert an offer, but in the long run, it's going to hurt you, bite you in the butt. What else we got here? We have Helen Murphy. She is some kind of health and wellness advisor or something. Make sure Helen Murphy is a real person. Do some checks, find out if she is credible when it comes to any kind of reviews or what she does. In this article, you'll see somewhere where it says, we decided it was time to analyze this product themselves. Well, who is we? I mean, are they a credible company?
Yeah, it's not likely Helen Murphy's a real person. Pretty sure she's a stock photo.
Yeah. And then if you scroll down one page, this is still showing how they're doing a bunch of reviews. So that last paragraph, personally, I'm especially a fan of our first choice. It's the number one it's number one for a lot of reasons. Well, sorry, lost my track there. She goes on to mention somewhere where she says quite a few people have started dropping pounds in their first week. Well, is this person actually talking to everyone that's using Garcinia Cambogia? She's obviously not going around talking to these people. So you just got to watch out for claims that people are making. Make sure they are true claims.
And sometimes they kind of hide them. Like, this is one that I actually was reviewing, and you start reading, you're like, okay, this isn't so bad, but you keep going down, you're like, wait a minute. Oh, she didn't really call a number of customers I spoke to even ordered their bottles in bulk packages. She didn't call anybody. This person's not even real, it's a stock photo. And that's the stuff, you'll read them sometimes, and they look so good, and you're like, wow, they really put their research in, they really did your thing. But then if you actually go back and ask them, it's a stock photo. I even saw one actually one time where it had like the iStock photo, like the logo right on it, and I was like, really? Come on. At least take the stock photo logo off and don't. So not only was it a fake person with a fake testimonial, they stole the photo from whatever, iStock photo it was. It was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk a lot about the FTC but like we've talked about before, there's other regulatory bodies. You're talking about 50 states with AGs, and then on top of that, this happens to us all the time. We have these people using company brand logos. These people have huge legal teams that go out and search for this, and they will send you a cease and desist, and
like
they will
Dr.
sue
Oz.
you. Like Oprah has a floor of people that will sue you, and they will make an example of you because they have enough money, and they will outspend you, and they will take everything as well. So, you have to think about all these different people that are out there that you have to make sure that you're, okay, that if this is real, as an advertiser, we would provide you with, an affidavit or something that actually shows that we actually were on or featured in whatever the publication is. And we keep all of those things on file. And if publishers ask for those things, we always provide them as well.
Yeah. How, actually, Nate, I think you deal with this a lot. When you go back to an advertiser and ask them for something to back it up, does anybody ever, get mad at you or not want to work with you? Or is it pretty normal?
No, I mean, it's pretty normal. A lot of times they actually do have that stuff right on hand. I've been able to get it within a couple emails. It doesn't usually take weeks or anything like that.
What do you do if they don't?
If they don't, I say, sorry, we're going to have to wait till you get it. I mean, being compliant is what it's all about. We're in it to make money, not lose money.
Yeah, and that is the hard thing, because a lot of times you really want to run an offer, or, I know Nate deals with someone, someone on the affiliate side says, hey, my affiliate really wants this offer, can we get it in for them? And Nate looks at it and he's like, hey, Sarah, I don't think we can run this. This looks terrible. And if he says it looks terrible, it's definitely terrible. And that means the rep then has to go back to their affiliate and say, I'm sorry, we can't pull that offer in. And then that means they go and they run it somewhere else. So you just lost that business. And that's, a business decision a lot of times, like, do I want to run something that's not okay just to keep the business? But the reality is that in the long run, if you're making the right choice and not running the junk, you're going to be around in 10 years. You're going to be around in 20 years. The companies that are in it just for the short term, make a ton of money, do whatever, makes the money right then, they're not going to be around. They're going to be the ones who lose their truck to the FTC or lose it to a state,
Yeah.
And actually, that was a really good point, which we're not going to get to, but the last two slides of this presentation, which you can all download the presentations from Affiliate Summit, actually covers one of the state laws, which is California. And California actually has specifically said for disclosures, how big they have to be, that they have to be in larger font than everything else on the page. They talk about colors, everything. So the law is copied in the last couple of slides. So if you guys want to take a look at that, it actually has specifics. And since everybody markets into California, even if you're not in California, you still have to comply with the law. And as Blaine said, we have a lot of laws in different states, and they unfortunately all apply to you because you're advertising in every state.
I think if you think you're going to get away with it, I think the last 3 years specifically have been just astonishing how many people are no longer in the space and have been taken out by someone. You know, if it's not a regulator, it's another business or whatever. And, you know, it used, like I said, when I first got into this space, people were just, it was kind of the Wild West. And, you know, we're really, I think, maturing as a space. And, you know, long-term businesses kind of do these kind of risk and reward, you know, measuring of like, you know, is this really worth it over the long haul? And I can tell you it's better to be on the compliance side because I'd rather have a steady source of income for the next 10 years than make a whole bunch of money, possibly have to lose it, pay a bunch of attorneys. You know, that's really not
Here's your
worth it.
1992 Nissan.
Yeah, and I want my 92 Nissan.
And your fur coats. Okay, well, we're going to wrap everything up. We're going to open up for any more last-minute questions. We are running out of time, so if you have any questions, please ask away. If not, our panelists will be around for a little bit after our session.
Thank
Amber,
you.
you forgot to ask me about my hair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your hair, how long did it take you to do today?
Like 5 minutes, but
Well, it looks amazing.
thank you. Yeah.
Focused on in the past or going to specialize in or focus?
They're going after diet really heavily right now. This last week they said that they're going to go after diet. They're going after diet, and then what was the other one? They just had they've been going for that for a while, but they did just announce again that they're going to go after the MLM. Diet is kind of their hot thing right now. It's an easy way, yeah.
Business
It's
opportunity. That's a big one, too.
anything that's deceptive is the answer. That's what they're going after.
I will say this, we see this all the time. There is not every single thing is outlined. And there was a recent FTC lawsuit with a text messaging situation. They didn't really have a ton of documentation on it, but the reality is what they were doing was it was considered deceptive because they were going through a forever and sent path from a text message and they were taken down because of it. You have to use your common sense on those. And I think, like she said, it's the gut check factor too. If it hasn't been previously, they can all of a sudden start targeting it, and then all of a sudden you're under the microscope. So you got to watch out for that.
It's usually based on consumer complaints, so that's where the FTC gets these things from, is consumers complain. On the FTC website, there's a form you can fill out and complain about something. A couple of complaints, they're not going to probably do anything about it. But 1,000 complaints, they take them all, they sort them out, they put them in little boxes, and if they get a bunch of them, they're going to look at that because 1,000 consumers complain, there's probably something wrong. So it's actually coming from the consumers. That's where they get them. I do think right now, though, diet's been hot for a long time, but they're definitely heavily going after diet right now, and biz ops, SMS, marketing scams, things like that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.